Welcome to our first well, it's not our first 2020 college share, it's our first fall 2020 college share. We've been doing this for several years from the Family Support Office, and we're glad you're here. I'm Mary North. I'm the director of the Family Support Office at Nyhouse Education Center. Our mission at Nyhouse is to promote reading success for all in three ways. We teach teachers about the science of reading. We provide parents with information and resources to help their children read better. And we provide classes for adults who want to improve their reading and spelling. While we've been doing this for many years, we are looking for suggestions for new presentations in the spring. So we're going to ask you to be thinking about that too. And at the end, you can put that in the chat or email us later. But last February, before the coronavirus caused all of us to change our ways, the College Share program was presented by the author of a book entitled Your Hidden Superpowers. In it, she discusses how failures, defined as things that do not proceed as expected, predicted, or desired, are actually the cause or the catalyst that cause us to change direction and grow into greater and different successes than we originally expected. This has been our nation's experience when the virus called life as we knew it to a halt. We've learned a lot, not the least of which is how to communicate, with each other virtually. So we're all on that journey of discovery. Tonight's College Share program is a shining example of this kind of resilience. Today, we're going to have a conversation with a resilient and determined person who has a lot to share with us about synergy, opportunity, the power of self-knowledge, and also on a practical level, recognizing the synergy of dyslexia and technology. Our speaker tonight is a longtime friend of Nyhouse. He's been a student here, has presented several seminars here in the past, and he lives in Houston with his wife and 2-year-old daughter. Let me present Amir Bar. He's going to wave over there. That's Amir. And we'll have more introduction later. After Amir earned his master's degree at UH, he worked for 6 years as a global advisor at Halliburton, which is a premier oil field services company here in Houston. At Halliburton, he designed and built software that helps drilling engineers improve their knowledge and performance online. Last spring, he joined another technology company, Kaltura, which is a leading video platform, providing live and on-demand video for businesses and educational organizations. Amir is also the owner and CEO of UC and Learn, a company that designs and produces teaching aids for students who are studying the structure of language for reading and spelling, especially students with dyslexia. Amir is dyslexic himself. He's a board member of the Houston branch of the International Dyslexia Association and an adjunct lecturer at the Kibbutzim College in Tel Aviv, where he's teaching a graduate course on universal design for learning. And this September, he started his second master's degree, this time at Harvard School for Education. We've asked Amir to share his experience around leveraging technology to learn more effectively in college and how that experience helped him to define his career. I want to take advantage of this Zoom meeting format and include you in the conversation. So I'm going to have some questions for Amir. We'll talk, but I'm asking you to please join in by putting your chat, not your chat, but your questions in chat, which I should call up so I can see them. And I can either ask the question or you can say in the chat, I have a question, and your name will come up and I'll ask you to ask that question yourself. So that way we can all engage in this conversation. So, Amir, welcome. We've known each other for several years, so I know a little about your story, but I want to start by asking you a few questions about your educational journey. When did you begin to understand that you had some learning issues?
Well, I think for a long time I knew I was a bad student. I just didn't really knew that I have an excuse for it and like a real problem. So I, spent 12 years of school pretty much suffering most of the time. Was very happy to finish it, to get out of school. But then later on, you know, seeing my friends going to college and all of that, I realized that, you know, that maybe it's something I need to do. But it was a real challenge because not just, you know, I really didn't learn in college, like in school, I survived it, but didn't really pick up a lot of important knowledge. And I'm originally from Israel. And one of the things that was my biggest issue is that I really didn't learn English in high school as I was supposed to. After I did the military service, which is mandatory in Israel, I realized that my biggest issue, you know, maybe I can catch up on history or whatever, you know, subject, but learning a language, it's really hard to do on your own. So I decided to come to Houston and take some intensive ESL classes at Rice University. And because I have some relatives here, and that's how I ended up here. And as soon as I started taking classes, which were very low level, there were like 7 levels of the ESL school, and I started at level 2. Level 1 is knowing the alphabet, okay? But even within level 2, my teachers right away, it started with them saying that they don't think that I make an effort. And I was like, okay, here's come again, you know, like another teacher that thinks that I'm not making an effort. And I'll make this story a little bit shorter. Ended up that one teacher did say, okay, maybe you have a problem. And I was not too open to recognize it, but at the same time, you know, I was challenged with the learning, and I ended up coming to the Nye House to do like a quick evaluation. And the Nye House helped me realize that, you know, that I did learn to read when I was a 3rd grader. I never read books for fun, you know, even today, really. So there's like few evidence that kind of helped me get to realize that, yeah, maybe I have a problem. And that's kind of what was a pivotal moment in my life where suddenly I could see that there was a reason why I was not a good student. And not that it solved that problem, but at least add a path for figure out how to, you know, to learn better. And it was not because I was lazy or like just bad student.
In Israel, does anybody evaluate or recognize dyslexia in the school system even now that you know of?
You know, I'm pretty old by now, and when I was in school, the awareness for dyslexia was not as good as it's today. Hebrew, the vowels are hidden, so you don't write them down. So basically, even if you have dyslexia, your chances to make spelling mistakes are much less than in English. So it's not like jumping to your eyes if I write in English, it's like all over the place, right? And you know, I was very good at avoiding learning and avoiding making an issue around it.
Right.
So it was not really identified.
Right. So when did you discover what you are good at, and how did you get better?
So, I want to apologize. My daughter is her bath time, and she's just behind that wall. So if you hear her, I don't know.
I can't hear her.
Okay, I can. It will be over soon. So I think, you know, when I left high school, I was really coming out of an experience that I was not good at, period. You know, the years in high school, I just wanted it to be over. Like truly, I enjoyed the other students and, you know, the social aspect of it, but literally did not care whatsoever for classes and all of that. But then I ended up going to the military, and actually that was a good experience for me to, sorry for that.
I can hear her now. It's okay. Okay.
This will be over soon. So I think that was a good experience for me to do something new that was not involved a lot of reading and writing and see that I can, you know, learn to do certain things and do them well if I just had the chance to learn it in a different way, basically.
Good. That's good. So the topic tonight is about the synergy of technology and dyslexia. So tell us a little bit more about how and when you discovered technology and how it impacted you.
So I think that, you know, shortly after I discovered that, you know, I had a problem, which was that visit to the night house, I knew that, you know, reading was hard for me, and I was a very slow reader, and writing was challenging as well. And I got my first computer at the time. And just so you get a point of time, it was the first MacBook that had Wi-Fi ever. And that allowed me
Yep.
to like sit in Starbucks and be connected to the internet and learn. And from that moment, that computer became to be my main tool to do learning. And I just literally spent hours and hours, doing everything from the computer, writing everything, you know, using the text to voice capability that are built in the Apple devices. Again, back then it was not a common thing to have this capability. So I think since then I became, I would say I relied on technology a lot, and by extension I became better at it just because I spend a lot of hours in front of technology every day.
And discovering it. As you said, it was just really coming in at that time. Is this a good place for you to tell us more about the tips for college success that I think you went to a special program, that was at Harvard too, wasn't it? That you learned about universal design for learning?
So when
I
did my master's degree at several years ago, I went and did an internship in an organization called CAST, Center for Applied Special Technology. They sit in Boston.
Yes, Boston. That's
and they, the people there invented universal design for learning, and I had a chance to spend a summer there. And part of my work in my internship was to create some kind of an artifact where I will share my experience as a dyslexic student. And so I created a book that is available online. I'll share it with you. I guess we're not going to go too deep on everything because then it will take all of our time, but I'll show you enough to kind of get a sense of things. Can you see my screen? Okay, just a minute.
Now we can.
Okay. So throughout my undergraduate degree, as I said, I used technology, and I didn't even realize that I had like methods to deal with my dyslexia. It's more things that I just did. But by the time I got to this program, I was more at the point where I could reflect on my methods to deal with my dyslexia in the university setting. So take into account that this book was written in 2012. Few things are a little bit outdated, but I think the notion is the same. I'm just gonna go, there's like 10 tips here. I'm gonna go quickly, and I think this will be a good point to take questions. Last time I spoke about it, there were some questions, so feel free to unmute yourself or text that that you have if you have questions.
Okay.
So as you can see, some of these tips are not built for COVID situations, but I think again they can be translated. So I think after I was diagnosed with dyslexia, one of the things that I started doing with any class that I've done is to go to the professor of that specific class and just meet with them in person at the time, obviously, and share with them that I had dyslexia and that I was you know, planning to make the most out of the class, but things are difficult for me. And, you know, it may sound like basic and kind of like why you need to do it. But especially if you go to a university where there are big classes, the professors usually don't know the student. You know, it's another name on the grading chart, basically. And what I found is that almost all professors really appreciated the fact that I went to talk with them and that I share the fact that I'm dyslexic. Never mind that I had the paperwork, you know, and it's not like they didn't know, but making it more personal and saying that that my intention was to invest, you know, the most I could in the class was really important. I did 2 years at the community college and 2 years at U of H. And, you know, these are universities and college that not necessarily everyone is fully invested all the time. And it was nice to see the feedback from the professors, you know, appreciating it. And it's in many places, it's served me well during the class. Whenever I needed a little bit of help, right, that was maybe unofficial. And maybe once or twice, I just didn't get a good vibe from the professor, and it was before the semester started or early enough so I can go and switch classes. So it was, I also wanted to make sure that I take a class with someone that I like to some point. The other thing that really saved my life is the ability to listen to audiobooks. Especially like literature, you know, like any like real long books that is not like a chapter that needs to be read, you know, for homework. There's more and more audiobooks today, and I just, you know, today I will listen to everything. I don't really read much. So that's a big, yeah.
I remember you're telling me once that you could listen to a book faster than some people could read it because you can make it speed up, right? So you can,
Yeah,
I thought that
that's
was a
actually,
tip.
that's a nice thing. When you listen to books or any audio, you can make it go faster. And if you do it long enough, you actually can train yourself to listen to things faster. And in fact, you'll be reading it faster than maybe someone that can actually read well. So that's where the, you know, you become to be a little bit of the superpowers, right? At the time, I guess today, a lot of things can, you can do text to speech, but at the time, PDF had a built-in option, and I could create any kind of document, save it as a PDF, and then have the computer read it to me. I also found it to be very useful to whatever topic I was learning and I wanted to learn more, is to pick up movies or shows. Again, that was back in the days where you needed to go rent something. Today with Netflix and all of that and YouTube, any topic you want, there's probably a video on that. And again, I found it to be a much better way to learn. This is my secret sauce for success in college. And I think, you know, as a dyslexic person, like proofreading my own paper forever will take me a lot of time. And what I've done at some point, really early, is that I gave up. I said, okay, I can, you know, I know that if I spend 5 hours, I'm probably gonna be able to proofread a paper, but it's not a good investment of my time to spend all of my energy on the one thing that is most difficult for me. And basically what I started doing is anywhere the class was not about, you know, about English or literature, I would basically hire someone to take my writing and clean it for me. And at U of H, I had a really convenient setting where one of my classmates was starting to be a teacher, and she wanted that experience of being able to correct papers for students. And I, of course, you know, needed someone. I did pay her, but like really little. And she was very fast. So like I would literally pay her for 10 minutes, you know, out of the hour. And that synergy really saved me. I think that's like the decision to spend my energy on the things that I'm good at and where I'm going to see value instead of fighting the one thing that I have difficulties with. It's important. And I can tell you, as someone that already spent several years in working, you know, which is the goal of everyone, right? School is just a mean to an end, is when you find the right job, people will, you know, there's other people that can do it for you. Very few jobs require you to do everything, right? So, you know, one of my main messages maybe for the entire presentation is to make sure that you invest your energy to make your strengths stronger. I'm not saying don't work on the things that are difficult for you, but don't spend all your energy on that, because I think as much as we'll spend time trying to improve our difficulties around dyslexia, they're always going to be there at some level. Then again, the Apple products as the text-to-speech that makes any website or any document, you know, you can listen to it. That's another big one that really saved me. When I started at the community college, I had some difficulties with the classes. And I ended up, because I did the ESL program at Rice University, I knew a lot of students, and some of them agreed to help me as tutors. Starting the next semester, I just went with a preventive approach. I basically said, I'm gonna find a tutor for every single class that I have. And if I don't need them, then I'll say thank you. And, but I'm not gonna wait until the midterm to realize that I have a problem. And that approach, again, really, really helped me, because the ability just to talk with someone about the topic of the class makes you learn things better. I used to record classes or take whatever notes I could take and really do the learning outside of the class and get my tutor to help me. This again, the voiceover is less relevant. One thing that I personally really liked and actually ended up as my business is that I like to create my own learning materials. I particularly used to make flashcards and other kind of pages with information. And I found out that the process of making a teaching aid to yourself, other than the fact that you end up with a teaching aid that you can use to learn for a test, but just making it makes you learn the topic better. And I think this method is supported with a lot of educational research that actually doing some things, get things to your head. And this is again the voiceover. Again, this is pre-digital world when you still got your syllable printed at the beginning of the semester. I have some really serious things around organization, serious problems. So one of my things was like, keep it organized. I hope you don't have that problem. And then finally, you know, recording the classes. I literally had this little tape recorder and which I could record the classes. This is super helpful. It does take time to go back and listen to it, but I can tell you that today in my job, I record a lot of the meetings because it's take the pressure for me to take notes, which anyway, I cannot read afterwards. And then I can go back and look, you know, I remember we spoke about something, right? So I don't need to watch the entire hour, but I can go back and listen to certain few minutes and remember what was said. I think that's it for the tips.
Yeah. So most of those things that you're talking about, you alluded to them along the way, that you use these in your work life too, when things come up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, when you're in high school and you're approaching college, you probably all you think about is college. But, you know, seeing it from the other side, college is a mean to an end. It's a way to be prepared for life. Certain knowledge you're going to learn are going to be useful, but I would say the majority of the experience in college is to figure out how to operate, how you learn best, how you do things, how you organize things. So I think it's a good practice, and I learned a lot of tools that I'm actually using them in my job.
We have one question here in the chat, sort of a general question. It says, what are some of the questions or requests that you think a dyslexic student should ask of their potential university? So, and it's what's available. How do you determine if you've got a dyslexia-friendly university, I think?
So I know that at the University of Houston, there was like a dyslexia center. I did the testing there. They actually offered a discount because there was a student doing it. And I got, you know, extra time and all of that. So I don't have much experience. Also in Harvard, they're very generous about all of that aspect. So that's my two experiences. But what I would say, and at least from my experience, I think a lot of the things that I did, like going to speak with the professor and all of that, they are not the things that like legally you are allowed to. It's kind of building that network of, you know, friends and professors and other faculty, and sharing your situation in a nice way, right? Don't need to make a big deal out of it. But I think generally anyone that's working in a college setting, if you tell them, I'm here because I want to learn and I'm going to invest a lot of energy, but yes, I have a challenge and I'm going to do my best, but I also would like you to do the best to help me. I haven't heard many people say no. You know, I think when you approach that way, you know, things work very well. I will say as a side note, my attendance in my classes throughout my degrees were probably 99%. I very rarely missed a class.
Exactly.
So I think the price you have to pay is to really be serious, right? If you ask a favor here, you need to make sure that you do all of your things on time, because then you start asking for other favors soon enough, you know, the professor or the TA, whoever it is, it's like it's overwhelming. But if you're really doing well in all aspects, and then you just ask for one thing, then I found it to be that you're usually gonna get that thing.
I'd just like to throw in here, from my experience in the family support office, that most universities these days have a learning support office. And as you pointed out, you don't necessarily have to qualify for accommodations, et cetera, in order to discover these kinds of services of proofreading and tutors and organization, if you engage with your professors and people at the school. So that I think in some ways all schools could be dyslexia friendly if you make them that way. Excuse me, I ask if you're dyslexic, dysgraphic, or if you are, do you have tools for that?
So I would say this, I was not tested for it. I think it was more expensive to do that testing, and I elected not to do it at the time. But I have a real problem reading my own handwriting. I will summarize it with the fact that I don't really write like handwrite. Like I may write one word as a note, maybe three, but you will never see me writing down like a paragraph. It just doesn't happen.
So where do you write?
So I kind of write in my head, I would say. I think with time, I kind of learned to think about things. Like one of my methods, writing essays or papers, was to write the outline, literally like 5 sentences, but then think about it and kind of talk to myself, obviously not loud. And it's almost like the skill of storytelling, you know. I don't know if I can teach it per se, but I think it's just like a practice that I probably spend many hours doing. And today I can just kind of, try to think about things and prepare them to be in a certain point.
Mm-hmm. And you use the computer, obviously. Do you use voice to print, or do you use a keyboard?
So if you probably recognize that I have an accent, and unfortunately, I'm yet to find the right voice to text software that understands me.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So
That's
keyboarding is pretty
forward
important.
for it, though.
Keyboarding. Okay, I have another question here before we get to universal design for learning. This question is from Niels. How do you determine what is worth your time? That is, do I spend my time on making the flashcards, or do I go on to Quizlet? And of course, he'll have to explain what Quizlet is.
So I know what Quizlet is. So
okay.
Account means that when I was doing all these things, there was no Quizlet and other tools like this. I would say there is certain research that you can dig into whether writing something with a pen make you learn it better than if you create a digital, tool. I would probably today will go with the digital option. I would say that. I think any tool that can make things faster is important. And it's kind of a trial and error, right? If you do it, you try it and you see it works for you, you stick with it. And if you see that it's, yes, it didn't take much time, but I didn't really do well on that exam, then maybe try something different. I think testing and evaluation is like the #1 thing through my journey of understanding how I learn best. No one came and gave me the manual, right? And it was a lot of like trial and error until I figure out what worked for me. And I still kind of do it today.
That's a good point. That's all about that growth. You have to figure out what works for you. Tell us about, I actually, while I've heard universal design for learning, I don't actually know what it is and why one would use it. Who uses it? Is it something I'm supposed to use, or something that other people do so that makes it easier for me to learn?
So universal design for learning is, in my mind, one of the most exciting, I guess it's a theory on how to best teach. And basically it started with these two professors from Harvard, which I had the pleasure to work for a summer, who came up with, in 1984, when Apple released the first computer that did talking. It was back then, it was a big deal. He said, why necessarily students have to read everything if the computer can talk to them? And let me see, I have a slide here that may be gonna make things easier. Start with that. Just a minute. Okay, everyone can see this?
Mm-hmm. Put it on slideshow and it'll be bigger.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so universal design for learning, the two most important things for dyslexic are the following. It says that the teacher should have multiple ways of representation. And basically what they say, if you need to read a chapter in a book, universal design for learning basically argue that unless it's a reading class, the student doesn't really need to read that chapter necessarily. Nothing in the objective of the class says that you have to read this information. They said you need to have access to that information, which can come up in different ways. And listen to it or watching it is one of these things. Now, it may sound like very basic, but for many teachers it's not. Many teachers comes with this experience of, yeah, you need to read that. So of course, that's one of the approach. I can remember many cases for myself where, probably most cases, that I never finished certain reading in class. When the teacher said, take 5 minutes, read this paragraph, and then we're going to talk about it, I never read it, right? Because I didn't have enough time. Universal Design for Learning says, no, as a teacher, you should offer the material in multiple ways. So it means, yeah, if someone is a good reader, you can offer it to them as text. But if someone has difficulties reading, you can record that text or provide a technology that will help read it. The other part of it is what they call the multiple means of action and expression. At least from my experience, in my previous degrees, definitely in school, a lot of work is like, okay, write something, right? Like 90% of all assignments are writing based. But again, Universal Design for Learning says, okay, if you learn about history and you want to know that the students understand a concept, okay, tell me about the 10 most important events of a given war or era. You probably used to ask your students to write about it, but what if they made a video and they created a PowerPoint or any other way to express this knowledge just in a way that is not writing. So again, it might sound like for you, if it sounds that it makes sense, it's because it does. But yet, a lot of teachers and a lot of places still sees the aspect of writing as part of the objective of a given class. Universal Design for Learning came up with these approaches and basically trying to train teachers to design their class activities so it can fit to everyone. Now, we think about ourselves as dyslexic as, okay, that's what we care about. But there's other people with difficulties out there. For example, if someone is blind, they cannot read either, right? So if tomorrow you're a teacher and you have a class and someone cannot see good enough to read, you're gonna need to come up with a solution for them to consume that content. So if it was recorded, now they can do it. So basically, Universal Design for Learning say, if you design for the extremes, then everyone in the middle enjoy the learning experience. I think another aspect that is important is that I know for myself, and I assume many others, figure out a way to survive and let's say get a B in a class. And when someone is looking at you as a student, they might say, okay, Amir is an average student, got a B, it's doing okay, it's fine. But in fact, the amount of energy that I invested in this class is equal to someone that got an A. But because I have these barriers, I didn't fulfill my potential. So there are people that even teachers would not recognize because they found ways to move from the D and C's to B's. But in fact, there are A students that if they're just given the opportunity to do things in their own way, they will be successful. I can give I'm taking a class now at Harvard that has a lot of reading. And if I had to read it, like really from the paper, it will be about, just for one class, about 5 hours a week. But my professor and her teaching staff record with their own voice the readings for all the readings per week.
Wow.
So we can go in, get a PDF, or we can get an MP3 and listen to it. And the feedback from the students coming in saying this is like the most amazing thing is overwhelming. And it's not that everyone is dyslexic, but if I end up studying at the end of the day when I'm tired after a full work day, even if I didn't have dyslexia, I may want to listen to something versus to read it. So this is where universal design comes to play and say, yeah, if you help the dyslexic person, you're also going to help the tired person. and you're gonna help the blind person and so forth. So there's a lot of people on the spectrum. It's not like either you are normal or that you have a certain difficulties. There's places in between. And by doing universal design for learning, if you do it right as a teacher, you can help each individual students to perform better. The other aspect of universal design, and like you see, there's three principles in universal design. It's pretty simple, is to provide engagement. And I'm gonna give a quick example. If you want someone to learn to read, okay, so they need to learn certain vocabulary, whatever it is. UDL will say what they read about makes a difference, okay? So if I read about a topic that I'm interested versus a topic that I'm not interested in, I will be more excited about, not that it's not easy for me, that is not hard, but just creating ways to engage students makes a big difference. So again, this aspect, I would say it's relevant to every student, not just for dyslexic, and it will be extremely important if you are a teacher, because there's ways to create engagement for students within the learning that are creative and allow people to touch their own aspect. I teach a class on UDL for graduate students who teach special education students. And every year it's the same thing. The teacher coming in, they say, oh, we already do a lot of things. But then they go and try certain things and say, oh, we have these students that always is really hard to teach them. But I told them they can write a song about something, and suddenly their music skills came in and they were all excited and all of that. So it's kind of like there's other ways to let people be connected to a topic. And again, as a teacher, if you make the effort, you can probably connect to it. So it's hard to give a one-on-one on UDL in 5 minutes, but I hope I didn't do it like extremely bad. I'll show you another, I don't know if you can see the text. So this is a slide, it's very famous when teaching about UDL, saying, look, everyone has their own skills, their own things that they're good. Having one way to test everyone doesn't necessarily work. And I think we see a movement around standardized testing and all of that becoming less popular. The other example, just a minute, is this one. You know, that one students like to read the steps and do something, and another student just looks at the pieces and knows how to do it. And I think the most important thing as dyslexics, I think, is that we definitely have things that we do very well. And sometimes schools can make us focus on the things that we're not doing well, about the spelling and reading and all of that, and not to really help us realize that certain things are, you know, I don't want to say a gift, because every person has their things they're good at, but I think recognizing these things and expanding on them is really important. I resonate a lot with these slides because I can imagine things and see them. I can design something in my head without even draw it, and I can see it in like 3D, right? I was sure for many years that all human beings are capable of doing it. And then I realized that no, there's a certain number of people, you know, percentage of people that can do it, but not everyone. So that gives me an advantage. When I need to come up with a design for something, I don't need necessarily a software or much. I can just sit there with a coffee and design something. You know, obviously at some point I'll need to show it to other people. But that's something that not everyone has. So if you have it, like definitely something to invest in. And I think UDL allow, for example, dyslexic students to build on their strengths versus not just to help them to deal with their difficulties, but literally do something that is exciting makes them join class and truly enjoy it.
Have you ever gone in and asked the professor if you could do something, you could show them what you know in a different way? Maybe you haven't had an opportunity to do that, but is that okay to do?
So can you explain the question a little bit more?
Well, if you had a project and they want you to write an essay, do you think it's acceptable, or has it been, in your experience, acceptable to say, essay writing is not my best means of demonstrating what I know on this subject. Could I make the video or something like that?
So I would say that I didn't make it a practice. My approach was more to use tutors or proofreaders to kind of, achieve the objectives. When you attend a university with, 200 people in a class, there's a TA that does something, they do what they're being told. There's not necessarily a lot of flexibility with how to you do your assignments. I can tell you that today in one of my classes at Harvard, the same one where the professor is recording the readings, she also allows us, we need to do every week a 500-word reflection on what we learn. But she said, you don't have to write it. You can record it. You can make a video. You can do a painting. It just needs to be 500 words of effort. That's the way she described the assignment. So, and then people do a lot of things. They're creative. They're not just like a written thing. So I think in a way, once teachers are open to it, they can see the benefit. But to the specific question, I'm yet to go to a professor and ask them to change the objective for that specific semester for an assignment.
Yeah. There's a question here that says, do you know, and you wouldn't necessarily know about local schools, but do schools specifically adopt UDL, or do you think it's a more general concept that individual teachers take on?
I think it's both. I think someone just mentioned that Region 4, which is the state's,
Educational Service Center.
I think I heard, I didn't know about it, but that's some kind of a UDL group or initiative.
Yes, I heard somebody say that. Who was that person? That person needs to tell us what that is at Region 4.
Okay, I just started it. Our school received a grant, so that it's paying for this training. There's 8 or 10 of us, I'm not sure, in this cohort, and it's a 3 to 5 year training, and it's all about
3 to 5 year training. Wow.
3 to 5 year commitment. Yeah. So I was chosen to be on this team, and we've just started, so I don't really know much about it. And so that's why I was interested to listen to Amir's, knowledge about UDL. Mm-hmm. And so basically we are getting trained on it, and then we're going to train the other teachers on our campus to try to all adopt.
Which district are you in?
I'm in Brazosport.
Brazosport,
Independent.
Right. Yeah. Terrific. Well, that's the way forward. That's good. Thank you. Amir, I was wondering too if you would, beg your pardon? Amir, can you come back to unshare your screen? Okay, that's what I want you to show us. Go back and show us the UC and Learn things that you designed.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about it. After I was diagnosed with, after I came to the NIHouse and I was interviewed, my English was so bad that I could not even take a test to evaluate my language skills. But basically just by answering a few questions, the NIHouse told me that I probably have dyslexia, and once I pick up more English language skills, I can come in and do the evening classes that the NIHouse offers. And while I was doing that program, I kind of came up along the lines of creating my own learning materials. I came up with kind of like a visual ways to to enhance my learning. I came up with this company name that says You See and Learn, and it's all about visualization. This is before I knew about UDL, but in essence, it is one aspect of UDL. And basically, by now I have 12 products that help teach different aspects within the dyslexia intervention curriculum, like roots and spelling rules and prefixes and suffixes and all of that. So just that's a really good example of how UDL material can look like.
And they're beautiful and they're useful. I want to note here that Niels, and maybe you'll tell us about it, Niels Triplett wrote here, my school teacher this year and last have offered this way of submitting assignments, various ways to UDLs. Niels, would you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so whenever my teachers either like give us large chunks of information or like we're submitting information, they always give us different options of like looking at that. So they give us like maybe a news article on the subject, and they'd always give us a video style and an audio style, and they'll give us like different ways to find the same information, and it's just been like really great.
Yeah, it sounds good. What school do you go to again?
Energy High School.
Energy High
HISD.
School at HISD. Perfect. That's wonderful. Thank you for contributing that information.
One comment on that is that this is definitely UDL, and UDL is very much attached to technology tools. And if you think about the world of 10 years ago, asking a student to record their homework was not as easy as it is today. So as technology becomes cheaper and sometimes free, if a teacher tells the students you can record your assignment, they probably don't need to buy any additional technology than what they already have now, which is an iPhone or a smartphone. So all of these things that I'm showing here becomes more and more easy to implement within the class context.
Good point. Good point. Does anyone else have a question that you'd like to ask? You could just press the space bar and ask Amir. I know wait time is important.
You can either write it or say it. This is UDL.
Well, while they're thinking, I have one more, which I think of as a wrap-up question, but it doesn't have to be. I was thinking about you now, and maybe we should put it in the context of your daughter. What would you tell your 16-year-old self about education and about learning as you look back? What would you tell yourself as I chose 16, but you can choose any age.
Yeah, I think my message will be actually more for the parents. So it depends on the age, but I think, you know, generally people wants to do well in whatever, and what fulfill most kids' time is school. So, you know, they want to do well, and especially their parents wants them to do well, and that's kind of the standard. And I think that without noticing, parents can also be like a source of stress, because having your school telling you what to do and, you know, not being good at it is one thing, but also I think in many cases, the parents and the family can also be a side that's, even with all the good intentions, are still like creating pressure on you know, on the areas that are already difficult. So I think my message, and I will be lying if I said that I knew it that I was 16, right? This is something that took me years to learn, but I think understanding what you're good at and spending time on that, and becoming even better at it, not ignoring the things you're not, obviously, and spending the right amount of time with them, but not to kind of give up on everything that you like and good at, just to catch up on an area that, you know, by design, you have a deficits with it, you know. So I think that's kind of the main message. If you can look on the things that dyslexia affects us and people in general, are relatively simple tasks, okay? If you look on the jobs that are being automated today, it's not the creative jobs that you think outside of the box and you are very specialized in something. Is the things that a computer can do. So I would think when it's come to reading and writing and, you know, math in certain levels, these are things that by themselves, they're very simple, not to us, but like becoming a really, really good reader is not going to necessarily help you in life that much. That if you focus on something that you're good and that you're creative and you become better at that, that's probably going to give you more advantage than to be, you know, good on the things that we have difficulties with. Today's reality with spell check and all of that, like you can survive pretty well even if you have spelling mistakes, you know. I'm not saying it's not important to take the time to try to improve it, but it's definitely not worth the investment of spending all of your time to fix something that at the end is not going to give you any like competitive advantage.
Right, it can be a cooperative effort. Say, I've heard it is one way to think about it is that in school you have to be a generalist. You have to be good at everything to be really successful at school. But in life, you get to be a specialist. So you specialize in those things and you get really good at that, and that carries you through.
And also today, if you want to learn something, you're not dependent on your teacher anymore. If I want to pick up a new skill and I know what I want, there's so much information out there on YouTube, on free websites, in different ways that actually can match more UDL than traditional learning. And if I wanted to spend 2 hours a day on learning a new skill, I could do it. I'm not dependent on anyone. And that's what makes the difference, you know, for people that are successful in their careers, is because they have something that they're good at and they have the ability to pick up new skills.
Learn it. Oh, that's the synergy part. Okay, we have a question here from Christine. She says, what is the best way to explain the benefits of universal design for learning to the teachers, or by extension to the schools themselves, to get them to adopt it, I guess?
So my theory, okay, it's a theory, is that generally people that go to be teachers, they're good at learning. They had a good experience in school, and they figure out, okay, we can be a teacher because we like school, we had good time when we were students. And that means that whatever was the method to learn, it worked for them, and they don't really have any experience necessarily what is to be on the other side of it. So I think one way to show it is to bring cases, and there's many examples of how people can learn in different ways and become good at it. I know there's one research that I read several years ago that were scanning the brain of dyslexic kids when they were reading, and they figure out that the brain burns 10 times more sugar, which is the energy of the body, when reading. So what that research is saying, that for me as a dyslexic student, reading 10 pages is as difficult as this, let's say, a normal, you know, students to read 100 pages. Or if you want to take it to sport, you know, running a mile is as difficult as running 10 miles. And I think when you put it in that context, at least that's what I do for my students who are teachers. When I introduce UDL for them, I try to have them be in the shoes of the students they're teaching and imagine that that have a certain difficulties and try to bypass it in certain different, you know, ways. I have an entire activity that I do for teachers to discover it. I actually wrote a chapter in a book on it. It's using Lego to teach UDL. And if you're interested, you can probably Google my name and UDL and find the book. You're still probably gonna need to buy it if you don't have access to like a university library.
This is a chapter in a book, and the name of the book is Using Legos to Teach UDL, or is that your chapter?
It's a book on how, on UDL, and one of the chapters is how to train teachers on UDL. And
wow.
That's one dyslexic mind approach to teaching UDL.
I'm sorry, what's the name of the book? Do you know the name of the book?
You know, if my memory is, this is exactly the things I'm not good at.
Okay, we'll find it out. I'll tell you what, or you can look it up and send it to me. And
I can send it to you.
If they ask me, someone writes and asks me, Christine, I can tell you. That's fantastic. Any other questions while you've got him here? Go to my everyone.
You can also speak.
Wait a minute. Now, it looks like maybe some things went through. Nope, that one was there. It says there are 2 messages down here, but I can't find them. There we go. Okay, that's the name of the book. Okay, we'll look it up. Any tips for slow processing speed? That's as in a diagnosis, if you will. Any tools that you think of you can help for people who are slow to process information?
So again, I'm not the authority in that, but I think that sometimes find the most appropriate way to consume knowledge will make things easier. So when I, discovered a way to listen to text, in many cases, I listen to things twice. So we listen it one time, kind of not worrying about it, becoming familiar with the content. And then I will listen to it again whenever I have the time and pay more attention, which I will never read something twice, basically, in my life. Okay, I probably will not read it if to begin with, but definitely will not read something twice. So
we're back to your concept, really, or the idea of trial and error. You just really have to find things that work for you. And I think the other thing to remember about it, honestly, is that it's not going to happen quickly. It is that trial and error means error. Something doesn't work, and so you go on to the next thing. Okay, I can't. Oh, I see. Well, I think Christine has found the link to a Lego model to help teachers. And I don't quite know how to, I guess come to think about it, theoretically it goes out to everybody, no? I'll have to share that. I don't know how to take it out of the chat, Christine, and put it out there. So I'll have to agree to disseminate that information. But it's, how can 4 Lego model help teacher trainers improve design? Okay.
that's a different one, but it might be interesting.
Okay, it looks like it's on your LinkedIn page now that I read that carefully.
Okay.
Wait a minute, here we go. This one, they're coming in backwards. You mentioned issues with memory. My son has the same challenge with short-term memory. Any tips on memory repetitive work? Memory work.
I used to do things, you saw the picture of the flashcards, especially in college where there were a lot of, like an introduction level classes where you basically need to memorize things, that's the essence. I used to, this is how I got into learning aids and teaching aids. And just, again, repeating things. If I had a card, I created it in my own way, and then I check, do I remember it? Yes, I put it on one side. No, I put it on the left. And I used to spend like hours just playing cards, so to speak. I can still remember like chemistry and stuff like this. There's really no shortcuts. Like you have to remember these things. I just used to like do the same thing like 100 times until I got it in maybe for enough time to remember it for the test. Not that I ever did too well in chemistry, but that was my,
Yeah, that's good. We're into repetition too again. Well, we really appreciate it, Amir. I appreciate it. Frankly, inspiring to think about the creativity that it takes to learn and to teach. And so as teachers, we learn from talking to people who have difficulty and in invented ways to learn better. We thank you very much for doing this for us. And if it's all right with you, I will share this video with some of the people that missed this evening. That I had a couple people actually email me ahead of time and say, I'm sorry, I can't come after all, and please send me the recording. So we'll do that. Anything you want to say to wrap up, and then we'll let these good people go.
yeah, I think my message is at the end, we're here, you know, because of dyslexia and the difficulties and a lot of, you know, when you say the word dyslexia, the association and the experience is almost always something negative, a challenge and all of that. And, or maybe someone that figured out and okay, they have tips on what to do, but it's all about that challenge. And I think my message is like, yeah, it's important, but don't let it divert you from what you're good at, what you're excited about, what's, you know, makes you want to do more things, what's keep you up at night in the good sense, because you can't wait, go do something. I think as dyslexic, we are thinking a little bit different, and that can be a competitive advantage. So I would say invest your energy in what you're good at and become even better at it.
That sounds perfect to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. We can't applaud, so we'll go for the wave. And thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, Amir. And we will be hearing from you at other times for sure. I am going to just put my screen up here because, excuse me, I want to be sure they have an email address, but our next College Share event will be College Panel, which we co-host with Houston branch of International Dyslexia Association and the Briarwood School. And we'll do that on the 6th of January, 2021, where this panel is where 4 or 5 current college students will tell us about what happens at their school, how they've managed college. But the important thing about this one is the college panel is they talk about their schools, going back to this question that somebody asked earlier about how do we know if we have a dyslexia-friendly college, and that's part of what we can find out from these kids. We're also planning seminars for the spring, so if anybody has any good ideas about how we can, of something that they'd like us to talk about, we'd like to know that too. I'm looking here for it's not going to come up. It's going to be blank, I can tell. Nope, it isn't. Good. This is what I want you to have this email address, NYHouse Family Support Office at nyhouse.org. This is where I'd like you to send your questions and comments, please, so that we can hear from you and give some programs that'll be helpful to you. So thank you very much. Thank you, Amir. Good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye.